With over 15 years of experience in HCM and professional services markets, Adam Sheffield oversees Global Upside's worldwide sales organization with the aim to help clients navigate global workforce complexity. A true entrepreneur at heart, Adam is tenacious in designing strategy and mentoring teams to forge strong client relationships and transform the way businesses manage growth. Please welcome Adam Sheffield.
Hello. Hi. I'm hoping you're all having a wonderful time at the breakout at the HR Summit by Bamboo HR. We're grateful that you're able to join our breakout session called Go Global, Act Local. I'm trying to provide you guys some strategies to keep you successful internationally with your employees. And just a little bit about myself and our organization and Global Upside. We've been in business for 21 years. We're actually headquartered in San Jose, so the Bay Area. We've been helping companies on the international side ever since then. And we primarily help around what I call kind of the entity creation and corporation, all the way through guidance around HR, payroll, to accounting functions. So all of those things that fall under the HR suite or the payroll suite or the accounting suite really comes to our organization to help support companies in those challenges internationally. We do it in 150 plus countries. A little bit about myself. My name is Adam Sheffield. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer here. I actually do live here in Salt Lake City. It's in one of our shared service centers. I live here in the mountains. Love the Utah snow. Can't wait for that to start so we can start skiing again. But about my experience, I've been in the HR payroll space for 15 plus years. Many of those years on the global side, helping organizations kind of navigate those challenges. Before I came to Global Upside, I was the VP of Global Sales for a company called ADP. And that's kind of how I got to know Global Upside. They were a partner of ours. They still are a partner of ADP's. But I came over, got to know Raghu, our CEO, very, very well, and came over to join this organization that was great at executing and delivering and filling in some of those gaps that existed. So excited to be able to talk to you today about some of the strategies and challenges and some of the kind of pitfalls that companies fall into when they go international. So to give you some key kind of considerations on this, on the international side and what you're trying to do, maybe you are already global, or maybe you're thinking about going international and you're trying to figure that out. The key thing is location. Where do you want to go? Why? What's driving you there? And then the question is to say, what type of footprint do we want to have? Is it going to be small or big? Are we going to be there for a long time? Or are we going to be there to kind of try it out? Maybe it's just to support one of your clients, or you find out that it might be a good market for you to be in. And so you might need to figure out what's the best strategy. What we mean by a footprint small or large, it really depends on how you set up that entity. So are you going to set up an entity, meaning it could be a branch, it could be a wholly owned subsidiary in that country, or are you going to use a company like some of the things that we provide, where we can do the employer of record service for you in those countries, or a PEO, that we provide that service. We'll hire your employees on behalf of you. Those are some of the things that you need to consider when you figure out what type of footprint you want to have. And then the other thing is to consider is, what are the HR and employment law in those countries? How challenging are those? We see a lot of times where organizations make a misstep there because they didn't consider that aspect of going international in that country. If they would have maybe selected a different country adjacent to that area, it could have been a better opportunity for them and better kind of employment law practices in that area versus some of the other more constricting ones. What's the accounting and the payroll like? What type of services do you need to have to make sure that your books are proper and up to date in those countries? Are you prepared to do transfer pricing? What does that even mean? All of those things you need to consider when you think about your international strategy. And then you need to put some thought process around, what systems do you have? Are the systems you're using right now only US based? Do they only support your international employees? Are there an area where they might not be GDPR compliant, so they might not be available for you in those other countries? And then what are the other compliance pieces that you need to have? What are the laws around You might need secretarial services or a resident director. Are you prepared for that? How can you navigate those things so you don't make a mistake and go into it improperly? When you do make that decision, you put those things together, now you're going to be hiring your employees. And these are the three areas where we mainly see U.S. companies do. First of all, they like to do what we call an independent contractor. Say, oh, we got contractors. Well, the 1099 or the independent contractors in the United States, that practice is not legal internationally. That is not something that you can do long term. However, we see a lot of U.S. companies do it. They wire money to individuals. And what happens is when there's a termination, regardless if that employee or contractor said that they were signing or paying their social charges, a lot of times they don't, and they don't even know how to. So the foreign country is going to side with those employees. Or you might have an issue where, hey, that could be seen as money laundering. You're just wiring money to someone internationally. That's a problem. Or you have issues with intellectual property. Is that employee, you're saying they're not an employee, then it's their intellectual property, and then it becomes this intellectual property fight. So we've seen all types of things. The way to do independent contractors legally, and it's different than what we do in the United States, is to be able to have that employee actually have their own company, and you're paying that company. That's the only way to do it. But then again, you still have challenges with intellectual property. So most companies in the U.S. now are kind of wising up, and they're realizing that's not a valid option for them. So they'll do either direct hires or an employer of record service. And to explain that a little bit, a direct hire is where you've set up your entity, whether that be a branch or a subsidiary, and you actually hire those employees directly. The employee contracts are with you. You are making sure that the payments are done, your payroll, HR, all the compliance things fall on you. The other option that has been kind of a fast growing option the past 10 years is this term called employer of record, or PEO. A little bit different than PEO in the United States, where you have co-employment. This is a situation where the organization becomes the employer of record. So all the employee contracts, all the compliance aspects of that employee are now on that organization's behalf to be able to do it for and behalf of for you as a client. So that is an area that's growing fast. It makes a lot of sense if you're just having one or two employees and you're testing on a market. It might make a lot of sense for you to consider that option. Here's a great quote that I love by the author Simon Sinek. It says, "When people are financially invested, they want a return. When people are emotionally invested, they want to contribute." I like that because it falls well into kind of your international employees. And a lot of times we see organizations that select a place, they know where they're going to go, set up their own entity, we're supporting them. But what they do is they lose focus, or they try to apply their U.S. business culture to a different country. And that never works. The way they do business in France or in Portugal or in Brazil or in Singapore is totally different than the way we do business in the United States. And a lot of times organizations make that mistake. They don't take that in account when they're looking to go international or they're trying to get something done globally. And that's important for that employee experience. They feel like there's an organization they're working for that doesn't, so to speak, get it in their culture or what's going on in their country. It can be very difficult for them. For example, if you were going to roll out a key initiative in France in the month of August, or a new training in France in August, that's a bad idea. Most of those people are on leave, and that would be a huge mistake. Or another thing that we see a lot of times are things like weddings. Here in the United States, you go to a wedding, it might be a weekend, maybe at the longest, maybe a day and a half or even a few hours. Internationally, it's different, especially in Asia. I mean, you could have a wedding that goes for a week to 2 weeks, maybe a month, depending on, a wedding in the family and who that is. And you have to be aware of that. So you don't try to apply your pressures or the way you do business in the United States to those countries, because you want those employees to be happy and to understand. The other areas that always are critical to keep in mind is under the employment law aspect of your international folks. Keep in mind that when you employ someone globally, there is no at-will employment. You cannot just terminate them when you want. You always have to follow a process in that given country. That can mean a lot of different things. That means that there is certain performance plans that you have to have in place. You have to have the right work councils buy off, depending on their job description and their job title. There's a lot of things to take in consideration. You can't just terminate them. And if you do, it's very, very expensive. It costs a lot because companies make mistakes when they try to do that. You're always giving them an employee contract. That's a legal binding agreement on both sides, not just an offer letter like we do in the United States. A lot of things might be you have to consider is around your pre-hire checks. What kind of background checks can you do? Can you do drug tests in a certain country? It's very important that you understand those things so right out of the gate you don't kind of step in a landmine that could really cost you. What are the immigration status of that employee? What type of work permits need to be applied for those employees that might need to be done? There might be a medical check that actually is needed to onboard that employee. Or in India, you have a 45-day waiting period and notice that they need to give before they actually leave their employer and come to you. So there's all these things that have to be signed off and documented with the proper jurisdictions and agencies in those countries to make sure you can onboard them properly. And then the other thing is, a lot of times companies miss kind of the entitlements or the things that are needed in those countries that are commonplace, that are required, that are mandatory, that are even outside of the employee contracts. It could be, things like in Brazil, where you might need to have 14 payrolls, even though it's a monthly payroll. What is 14 payrolls, 14 months? There's only 12 months out of the year. Well, you have to run payroll before they go on vacation in the summer, and then you need to run an extra payroll during the holidays, during the holiday time. So that is something that you have to you need to be aware of, and you need to make sure that you're doing those things right. If not, you're going to have a disgruntled employee, and then you're going to have some very expensive fines coming your way. Some of the other things that a lot of organizations maybe aren't aware of are things like work councils and collective bargaining agreements. The job description might cause that employee to fall under that. There's different requirements and guidances that are needed if that's the case. What are the working time regulations? What does that mean? Who are the people that you need to have clocking in and out? I just recently, a year ago actually, in Europe, in the EU, they actually had a new ruling that said everybody has to track their time. Regardless if they're hourly or salary, they have to track their time because they found that some of these salaried employees actually will be available for overtime depending on the country. So what happens is a ruling goes like that out. Now each country's identifying how to do that properly. So it's important that you know those things so you can make sure that you're on top of them. Again, so you don't get in trouble with your employee and or the government or agency that is responsible for those things. And then what are the benefits? What are the benefit packages that are customary and which ones are kind of supplemental on top of the benefits that you might not have in the United States or that they're kind of the norm in those countries? Even though they might not be statutory, these might be more customary and therefore called supplemental benefits in that country. The other thing to really keep in mind, right? You think about these global employees, they're spread out across the globe. And maybe what we see a lot is most of the employees in the United States or North America, and then they've got a handful of employees globally. And a lot of these employees are ran by different systems, whether they be local systems in those countries or their Excel spreadsheets and email is typically what we see. And that employee really doesn't have the best kind of experience of feeling part of the organization because they're not part of that system that exists. A great example, you've got Bamboo HR in the United States that you guys are probably using. They do a great job. They have a phenomenal product. But internationally, there might need to be some wage and hour laws in a given country that you're going to have to track independent of that. So how do you do that? Typically, we see Excel spreadsheets or emails that are done. And then what happens is you lose visibility. So you can't make good business decisions because you don't have the right functionality with your HR system. So it's important that you consider an HR system that can function in that way, that can connect, that can work with your US system. I mean, one of the things that we have at Global Upside is our own global HR system that connects with Bamboo HR, because Bamboo HR does US, we do international. We provide the localization and the local requirements in those countries in our system. And it works very, very well. So now your employee feels connected and he can make good business decisions. So that functionality is really, really important. And then what type of systems can connect? What is it? What are the capabilities of it? Because you might have little nuanced things that need to be done based on the requirements in that country. What's the reach like? Is it in multiple different languages? It's really difficult to give someone a system that's only in English and they speak Japanese. That can be challenging. Do they feel like they're part of the organization? Probably not. However, if that system that they're interacting with your organization actually is in Japanese, that makes them feel like, wow, this company values me. I'm only one of a handful of employees in Japan, but they do value me, that I can actually communicate this way to my organization. Then how reliable is it? Does it have the right GDPR or security requirements that are needed to be legal in those countries? Or is the data being housed properly? Is it housed in the system that's going to be able to have the proper backups so you don't go down and that you're really struggling to stay connected to your employees? So those are the four aspects that we really consider when you're looking at your kind of HR systems and how you're going to manage your employees worldwide. Get out of the Excel spreadsheets and emails. It's not the best way to manage. And by the way, you can really open yourself up for some liability because of that. Get out of those. Get into a system that makes sense. Give you visibility into your organization. Kind of like you're doing with Bamboo HR today in the US. Another great quote from Doug from Campbell Soup. To win the marketplace, you first must win the workplace. Can't agree with that more. You have to take care of your employees. It's important that we do that. Sometimes it's really hard to do it when they're so far away from us. I mean, look at today. We're at a webinar. We're having a conversation over video again. How many Zoom calls are we on lately? But we can't get on a flight. We can't just fly away and see our employees face to face like we used to. It's a totally different workplace. So how do they feel connected? How do we keep them engaged? Those type of things that we talked about, systems, culture, all of those things are very, very important to make sure that we keep those things aligned so our employees feel like they're part of a great organization, which I'm sure they are. Some of the other things that we have as far as keeping those employees engaged, that we would give recommendations to, is how do you want to manage them? A lot of organizations will manage them central. They'll have a central hub here in the United States that kind of manages their international employees. But as they get bigger, they typically go with a regional kind of approach, that they have a group of people that will manage, Europe or Asia, that are more close to those time zones that make more sense. And then as they get bigger and bigger, they typically actually have someone locally to help support them. Again, still reporting into kind of a centralized, corporate hub, but really that's where the rubber hits the road as far as services being done. But making sure that you have that kind of capability. And then when you have local support, if you don't have it on your own internally, who can you reach out to? Companies like us, we make sure that you have that local support internationally, that you don't have to try to figure that out on your own. You're not Googling something to figure out what's the answer to a very serious question that you're trying to deal with one of your employees. And then what type of local expertise do you have? Is there someone in an organization that can do some of the things that we've been talking about? Great. If not, what do they know as they get more knowledgeable? Can you now add those things to them? And then your communication, are you available? What's your work hours and time zones look like? Again, this is where systems can really help and support to be able to communicate to your employees and be able to kind of have a case management log if done well, that you can manage those things. So again, it's not just email and you're trying to communicate with someone in Japan in Japanese when you speak English. There's ways that you can handle those and support those better for your employees. And then what type of payroll systems need to be put in place? Making sure that you're required, all the requirements are done in those countries. Are they being paid at the proper time? You don't want to miss a payroll. You don't want to miss a pay stub for someone. First of all, are they getting the paper pay stub still? Because in some countries, that might be a requirement. So those things are really important, that they feel like you understand their local country, and it will help them be more engaged. And then going back to benefits. Benefits is a big one. In the US, we're so used to the company providing those benefits for us. And internationally, it can be a little different. You have the statutory, they're mandatory. Obviously, you're going to be required to provide those. Those aren't going away. That's part of the service or employee someone in that country. But then there's what we call the customary and supplemental benefits. What are those customary benefits? This employee does this type of work in that country. They're used to a certain set of benefits that you might not even be familiar with. And then above and beyond that, sometimes you really want an employee to stay. It's a retention tool. You might provide supplemental benefits on top of the customary benefits. So there's kind of a whole process to understand the benefit aspect to your employees internationally. And each country is different. There is no one size fits all solution. It really is. And again, these are some of the areas that we can help support you at Global Upside Corporation. Like I mentioned earlier, we've been doing it for 21 years. You have our contact information there. You're welcome to free to reach out. We love supporting organizations. We've had many of situations, and I'll give you a couple of examples, which I think get a good taste of kind of who we are and what we're all about. We provide the life cycle for an organization in a given country. I'll give you an example. We had a private equity come to us and say they're buying out 100 and something employees in 10 countries from a large organization. It was a divestiture, and they were buying them out. The seller really wasn't helping them kind of transition. And they came to us and said, we want to put everyone on your employer record service. That's what we want to do. And we talked to the long-term strategy of what this private equity was trying to do. Are you going to be in those countries that you're trying to put everyone on employer record? And actually, it might make more sense to set up your own entities. So we ended up setting up, instead of, it was in 12 countries, we ended up setting 10 countries up with their own entities within the 45-day window that they needed for their TSA, and transitioned to 2 other countries to employer record services, because that's the type of flexibility this company needs. It's never a one-size-fits-all. Your strategy will vary country by country, client by client, however you're supporting whatever's driving your international needs. And that's important to keep in mind. And we're here to help and support you. So if you have any other questions, please reach out, let us know. Enjoy your time at the conference. Enjoy this beautiful fall weather. And thank you so much.